All right, everybody. Welcome. My name is Via Williams with the Ben Kinney Companies. Welcome to our Wednesday webinar, which we do every single Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. I should say we do it every single Wednesday that I'm not out of town. Let's be honest, there are some Wednesdays where this doesn't happen, but for the most part, I'm here every Wednesday at noon PST, that's 2 CST. And these Wednesday webinars are really for real estate agents. They are highly tactical. And our goal every single week is to give agents 1 to 3 things that you can walk away from within an hour of the webinar and use immediately. These are, I get practitioners for all over the country, and I actively seek out the best in class. And these are typically really specific, topics, right? So, last week, we had an incredible group. We had a rookie panel, one of our highest viewed ones we've had. And we had 3 agents talking about how they sold. One sold 26 homes in their first year, one sold 39, one sold 12. And we just drilled deep on mindset, what their approach was, literally what their scripts were. We got really specific on that. But we've had ISA panels, we've had buyer consults. We live cast all of these webinars on the Pivot Shift Ahead Facebook group every Wednesday. And then we also, replays are easy to find on YouTube and whatever. So next week, I actually have 2 events to invite you to, which is cool. I'm doing a business planning on Tuesday for our brokerages on Tuesday, 11 to 1. And we're going to have a downloadable workbook, and you're going to walk away with your 2021 business plan, or at least very close to having that completed from that. And that's from 11 to 1. If you are interested in joining us in that, just message us or let us know. And then our next week Wednesday webinar is going to be my one of my BFFs, Wendy Papasan, and we're going to continue that theme of 2021 planning, and we're going to spend a whole hour on what we call the GPS, or the 135 and the 411. Super awesome tools. Basically plan anything in the world, anything on the planet on one page. And then the 411 is how to have a relationship with your calendar, how your goals can have a relationship with your calendar. So really, really awesome stuff. I cannot express to you what a game changer those 2 tools are for me. My whole team does them. I do them. I mean, it's how I do my business planning. It's how I plan anything, right? So that's really great. But today we have an incredible panel. So I've been wanting to do this one for a while. And what I did is I actually spent a couple weeks asking people for referrals. These guys don't know this, but I spent a couple weeks asking people for referrals. And I really want to just pick the brains of some of the top real estate agent coaches in the nation. Because I'm dying to know, what do they see? These guys have coached thousands of agents collectively. And I've been dying to know, what do they see? What are the common mistakes that they see time and time again agents make? What are the awesome habits? In fact, I asked them, one of the questions we're going to ask them today is, what's the number 1 habit you think an agent can create, to be successful? What do they see that's working? What do they see that doesn't work, right? I've been dying to pick the brains of top real estate agent coaches. So today I'm super happy to tell you I've got 3 brilliant panelists for this, right? Alyce, Dailey, I've known you for years, Alyce, and you're a MAPS coach, but I would say not just you're a MAPS coach, you've created an incredible team on your own. You own a brokerage. You know pretty much every aspect of real estate, right? I would consider your real estate IQ at genius level, right? And so you've just got this great background. You're not just a coach, but you've done it yourself, right? Yeah. So where are you from? I know where you're from, but I want you to tell everyone else.
So we run a team in a market center out of Baltimore, Maryland.
Cool. Exactly. Yeah. And we'll come back. We'll come back to you. Don't you worry. Karyn Kochanowski, Forward Coaching. You have coached, I'm guessing, I don't know how many hundreds. Yeah, hundreds at this point, of agents for 25 years. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's so perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. You've done this for years, and you see patterns emerge, right, over the years.
Absolutely. This is a great topic. Great topic.
Yeah. Well, we're really happy to have you. Are you based anywhere geographically, or you just kind of coach agents all over the country, right?
I've got coaching clients all over the country. I live in Huntington Beach, California, so I'm coming live from Huntington Beach today. And yes, but I've been coaching mainly all over the United States, also locally from LA to San Diego was kind of a territory of mine for quite a while as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. David Monroe. So David and Monroe and I work together. David is our Ben Kinney companies. He's one of our productivity coaches in the office, my home office. And David, I know you've done this for 6 years. You have a thriving productivity coaching program here in Kirkland, Washington, in the Seattle area. And you now have other coaches in some of our other market centers also doing this. So your specialty really, as I see it, is that newer into your 2-3 agent, right?
Yeah, getting new and newer agents into production, or the ones that had started production but maybe kind of had a false start, getting them reignited essentially.
Yeah, that's right. So as always, you guys feel free to be super interactive. I am on Zoom, and so I can't see the Facebook interactions, but Hattie monitors them, and then she pings me on Zoom. So if you're watching us on Facebook Live and you have any questions, we'll try to address them. Same with our Zoom audience. If you're watching this on replay, oftentimes I'll come back and answer questions, after the fact. And I know these guys might check in from time to time too. I just promised you, people. But I know that you're gonna check in on that, right? I know you're gonna go check in and answer their questions. All right. So drum roll. Are we ready for the first question? David Monroe, what are 3 things you wish every real estate agent would do?
What I wish every real estate agent did. Now, I'm going to put one out that I think everybody expects to hear, which is lead generate, right? But I'm not going to say it's one of the 3. I'm going to say that that's such a big thing because I'm going to say that is the business. So outside of that, I wish all agents would ask for the business. Specifically ask for the business. Instead of floating things out there and expecting someone to say, hey, can I deal with you? Can I work with you? Is actually ask for business, ask for the business, ask for the referral. So that's one thing that I think is super, super important. Also, I would love to see all agents practice scripts beyond just memorizing them. And this is a really, really huge thing. I don't think people even realize how big of a thing this is, that what a typical person does is they'll practice a script until they've memorized it. And so they can say it without looking at it. They're like, okay, good. I've memorized it. I'm good to go. I'll go use it out in the field. And then they show up at their appointment. Let's say it's a listing appointment. And all of a sudden the words fall out of their head. They're like, I thought I knew this script and I just butchered it like crazy. Because what happens is when we get in this state of discomfort and we feel a little bit nervous, the words are going to fall out of our head if they are not ingrained in our mind. And so the issue is the process of going from 0 to memorizing a script is pretty short. The time to go from memorizing a script to internalizing a script is long and takes a lot of practice and is very, very boring, or at least feels boring.
David, I want to stay on that a minute. So I just finished a book last week called Performing Under Pressure. I'll link it in Facebook. I can't remember the author. And you know what he said on there that jumps out at me with that? If you learn, they did a bunch of lab tests. If you learn something under a state of anxiety or stress, or where meaning like, someone's watching you or, someone's evaluating you, you will retain it when you're under stress. So when I had my team, for instance, and you and I have talked about this before, I think the first offer a real estate agent writes is a monumental moment in their world. Like, I think there's nothing to substitute for that first offer. So we used to do fire drills, and we had our agents in the middle of the week, we would randomly just go, okay, you have to write an offer and it's due in 5 hours, because that's how life happens, by the way, when you're a real estate agent. And we would make them go through, we had it all planned out. They would have to present them to me. And they were more nervous presenting them to me than they were a client. And we did that because we wanted to simulate the stress and anxiety so that they would practice on us, not on the client. And I think the same thing goes with scripts. I couldn't agree with you more. If you practice and role play with other people on your own time, you're a little more elevated, you're a little more nervous, you're a little more aware someone's watching and listening to you. Whereas if you're in front of your mirror, there's not a lot of stress involved in that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, like even in group coaching sessions that we do, we would sometimes put someone on the hot seat. And we would say, we mentioned it at the beginning and say, whoever's going to be on the hot seat is going to gain the most from this experience, far many times more than the people observing. People observing are going to get value, but the person on the hot seat, you're going to get the most value. So there is a trade-off for being nervous and potentially fumbling around a little bit. Is you're going to retain more out of this than anybody. And so that's a heightened state of emotion that they're in, which in that case that they're nervous. But yeah, even going back to internalizing the scripts are so important, because then you can break them apart and use them in conversation. You can scatter them, pepper them through conversation as needed, instead of using a script as a crutch, which is, oh, they say this, and okay, I think I'm going to use this objection handler on this. So then they stop listening to the person, and they're thinking of how they're going to construct this script, and then they deliver the script, and they can't figure out why they just got another objection right afterwards. And it's because they didn't listen, right? So internalizing the script, that's a big deal for me. If I were to say a third thing, there's a toss-up. So this was kind of a challenging one for me. One's very similar, but so I'll give one that's not quite as similar. And it has specifically to do with open houses, because we have a lot of people, that we deal with, newer agents. Open houses are other than their sphere of influence, is a great lead source. And I would love to see every agent at an open house close people into a buyer consultation. It's not about getting them to sign in, because that's not the victory, is getting them to sign in. Sure, that helps, but actually booking a buyer consultation with them before they walk out of the door, that's the big win. And I would love to see more people close for the buyer consultation rather than close for getting someone to sign in, or in addition to getting someone to close for, to sign in.
You know how I feel about that. That's what I teach. So I completely agree. I love it. Karyn Kochanowski, possibly the best name for a coach I've ever heard.
Why, thank you.
I know, you've never heard that before.
My three. Okay. So I wanted to start out with saying one of the things I wish agents did more often was to have a really strong morning routine.
Ooh.
A solid morning routine that they stick to on a consistent basis. And I could go into a little bit more detail about that, but and I can in just a little bit. But I think that's the one thing that if you mastered that, it could really, really elevate and grow your business. The second thing, which kind of leads into that, is really working in a more of a proactive way instead of a reactive way to the business. So in your morning routine, really putting in some systems in place, some time blocks in place to really work on your business instead of in your business. So often we're consumed with what's going on in our business, whether we're working a transaction or we're solving problems, and this thing comes up and that thing comes up, that we feel really busy, but we tend to have a lot of peaks and valleys in our business. So if we were to really have a strong morning routine that included lead generation, lead follow-up, and some key things that would grow your business, work on your business, I think that just making that small change would make a huge difference in a lot of people's business.
Well, let's drill down on that, Karyn. What do you think should be in the morning routine? Let's go there.
So that's a really good question. So I think that if you can make a winning morning routine, that your day is won by 12 o'clock. Like you get to 12 o'clock and you're like, no matter what happens, I already won the day. So what does that look like? A lot of times it's some sort of a workout in the morning. It's getting started at a specific time and sitting down at your desk at a specific time. For a lot of people, some people it's 8 o'clock, some people it's 9 o'clock. And then what do you do between those hours? Let's say 9 to noon or 8 to noon. What do you need to be doing to really work on your business? So much of it needs to be following up with leads, making sure nothing falls through the cracks, having sort of a top 10 list of your leads, on a whiteboard or somewhere in front of you where you see them every day. So your lead follow-up, going back through your CRM, making sure that that's up to date. any kind of lead generation that you're doing, whether it is farming, whether it's, anything that you're doing in terms of lead generation, which is a whole other topic, should be done as much as possible in that before noon time frame, if you can. Now, we say a morning routine, but I always tell people mix it up just a little bit and, throw in an evening once a week or a weekend day and just mix it up a little bit, but try to stick to that morning routine so that you can, really win that day. Yesterday, I had a great coaching call with somebody who's been in the business quite some time, probably about 10 years. And she said, I've got this time block from 8 to 1. And she goes, I'm just sitting at my desk, not really knowing what to do, what I should be doing. So I said, okay, well, let's take a look. What is the one thing between now and the end of the year that you could do that would really leverage you into the new year if you were able to get it done? And she said, you know what? I really need to call people. I really just need to get in touch with people. And I need to update my CRM. I said, okay. So we came up and we built a morning routine for her to get that done. And we broke it down into segments and it was very doable for her. And what she said was, if I can get this done, what is that going to do to my business? It's going to reignite those relationships. It's going to get me in touch with those people. And in the new year, when they're ready to do something, hopefully I'm top of mind, right? So did that answer that?
I love that. And
yeah.
I love it. So we've got, that was working in a proactive. So it was morning routine was number one, working in a proactive way was number
Right.
two. What would you say the third
Number
thing?
3 would be consistent lead follow-up. Is really don't let leads slip through the cracks because you've forgotten about them. This year, I've had people go through, when we shut down with COVID and all of that, go back through old open house lists. Like in California right now, we can't do open houses. And some other areas of the country can't do them either. And so, go back and, get those lists and start calling people and touching base with people and be very consistent with your lead follow-up. Because most people will tell you, most agents will tell you that they for sure feel like they had probably missed out on several transactions this past year just because they didn't follow up.
Yeah. This is all super, super good. Alyce, I can't wait to hear from you.
So I think the first one is a mindset piece of treating it. People get into real estate because they're like, I want to be my own boss and I want to own my own business. And we come into the industry and think, I'm going to take off as much time as I want. I can work whenever I want. It's really great. When the reality is it's a job. So if we come into it and treat it like a job, the business will actually be amazing. But I watch people come into it and want all the benefits of the business without the work of the job. And when you look at the habits, I see a lot of people that would be fired if somebody else was managing them. So really, would I fire myself?
Totally. I also, like you guys, I teach, I speak, I coach. I mean, it's been thousands and thousands, probably 10,000s of agents. And I have to say, I always say this to people. I'm like, you name me a 6-figure job that you don't have to work, 60, 70 hours a week on your first year. Why would you think this is any different? Like all these people who are constantly preaching, work-life balance, I am all for it. I have 3 kids. I'm married. Like I love my time off, but you just don't get that without putting in some initial time and treating it completely like a job.
Yeah.
It's like a big deal with me. I agree with you.
Yeah, looking at your calendar, what time are you actually getting in? What time are you actually leaving? If you say that you lead generated for 3 hours, okay, how long were you actually on the phone? So being really honest with what parts of this are you treating like a job and where is there room for improvement? The second one I'd say is tracking numbers. So just recognizing that the language of business is numbers. So to hear people say, well, I'm not really good with numbers. Okay, well, I'm not asking you to go get your CPA or be an accountant or anything like that, but how many calls did you make today? How many people did you talk to? really simple stuff. How many appointments did you go on? Like, these are really simple things that you don't need to be an Excel expert to be able to track those kinds of numbers, because you get to the place where in my business, I know that 20 contacts, I'm going to get a closing.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I know that? Because I've tracked it for years, and I can tell when a market shift is going to happen based on tracking my numbers. And so you're able to turn your business more quickly when you can recognize the trends faster. And you only get to do that when you start tracking your numbers.
Do you want to hack? Do you want to hack for that?
I would love it.
Because that's a huge DHB of mine, deeply held belief. I can't express it enough. And for those of you, there's a couple hacks. Number one, you can always go look on your appointments you can find on your calendar the week before. Because most of you, I would like to think, if nothing else, are going to throw it in your iPhone calendar, right? And if not, that's the habit to build, because you can always go back. But my big advice to you, what we do with our team leaders and what I do with the agents on my team, text yourself or find someone to text it to. And then later on, you or someone else can put it in a spreadsheet, but the raw data is really, really hard to track after a day's gone by. So just shoot yourself text, go, how many people did I have a real estate conversation with today? Okay, 8, great. How many appointments did I set? So we like to do contacts, appointments set, appointments held. And remember the real estate sales process, contacts to appointment to agreement before we get to pending and sold. Okay. So we have to track agreements, either a buyer listing agreement or a seller listing agreement, right? So we want to track contacts, appointments set, appointments held, agreements, we call them mutuals or pendings or in escrows, whatever you call them in your market, and closings. And if you just shoot yourself a text every day and build that habit, you can enter it in later. You can have a year worth of that data and then sit down and either hire like your high schooler or someone to put it in. But I cannot agree with you any more adamantly on that topic.
Yeah, just get rid of that limiting belief of I'm not good at numbers. Just get rid of it. Just decide that that's not a thing. And again, you don't have to be able to do all of your own books, but you do need to be able to track some of those numbers, and it's so helpful in the long run. And then the third thing I'd say is we're kind of in this funny industry where we're always looking at people and their successes, and we're like, oh, I want a business like that person. I want to do what they did. And we forget what makes us authentically us, and we try to be other people and have their businesses. So instead, I love what Jason Abrams says of like, just be more human with more people more often and find your tribe. Like, all the deals that you want right now exist within the people you're already in relationship with. So do things that are authentically you. If you love wine, great. Let's create a client event. Let's create a community around wine. If you love books, do something with books. If you have kids, do events or, things that appeal to families with kids. But don't try to be somebody else and have somebody else's business. We already have one of them. We need one of you. I did my first year in real estate was in a new market, and it was in 2005. So it's very much a market like the one we're in right now. So it was building one relationship at a time with new people. And I sold 19 houses in my first year, and I was pregnant with my second kid. So those of you that are in places where you've lived your entire life, or you've lived there for more than 2 years, you know enough people already likely to have the business you already want. But it's more about just being more of, I think it's really freeing when you realize the more authentically you actually are, you'll attract people to you that you actually want to work with.
Well, I love all of these because to me, this was really 9 things, right? Like, I know there's a lot of commonalities woven in, but we could stop this right here. And I feel like everybody would get a ton of value, knowing that you guys have talked to hundreds, thousands of people between you, thousands of real estate agents specifically. And you're saying this. Going back really quick to David, you said something interesting. Because the very first thing you said, you led this off, you said, I wish people would ask for the business more often. And what I always remind people is a lot of training I see, it trains you to ask for the referral after closing. Mm-hmm. And I want to remind all of you agents, during is when they talk about you the most. So the time to ask for referrals is actually throughout the process, and even at the beginning of the process. The end is a lesser, you get less ROI from that. So during the transaction, you want to ask for the referral many times. One of the best gifts I can give you is the Wednesday webinar where we had Mike Hicks and the Hicks Anderson group on talking about the promise script. And they walked us through their entire system about how they start every relationship with, hey, I want to let you guys know right now, we exist from your referrals. And what we try to do is, over exceed expectations, because we want you to give us at least one client before this closes, by the time we get to the closing table. And they duplicate every client, spending not $1 on ads, no marketing. They get all, it's incredible, right? So Hattie, maybe you can dig up that link while we're talking and post it again. It's on the Pivot Shift Ahead page. It's everywhere that we have our Wednesday webinars. It's called The Promise. And it's my gift to you. Those guys are amazing. They're out of Idaho Falls, and they're one of the top real estate teams in the nation. And let me tell you, that's not the biggest market in the nation. So, in case you're wondering. So Alyce, let's stay on this a bit. And I want to move to my next question, which might feel repetitive, but I mean it in a very different way. And the question is, what's the most important habit a real estate agent can form? Because you gave us 3 best practices. Now I want to get into what's the foundational, if they don't have any other habits in real estate, right? Just think of it this way, no other habits. What is the one habit that you think if they formed, they could have a successful business?
I love the bold law. It's not about selling real estate. It's about following a schedule. Mm-hmm. And we violated all the time with things that are just so important. It's just so important because it has nothing to, you realize nobody here said lead generation.
Yeah.
When we said like things that are most important, like we didn't say go lead generate, because we know that if you have the habit of being able to follow a schedule, it'll happen. It'll be there. And so are you showing up at the same time every day? Do you have things in your calendar that you know already you're not going to do, but they're time blocked in there? That's not a time block. Spoiler alert. So if you're not doing it, just take it out of your calendar. Stop lying to yourself, because what you're doing is you're building this muscle that you're allowed to ignore what's on your calendar.
Oh, that's so true. So good. Let that sink in for a minute. Will you say that again? That's really important.
If you have stuff on your calendar that you are consistently ignoring, you are building a muscle, whether you realize it or not. And the muscle is one that says, it's on there, but it's not important.
You're building a muscle that is training yourself to skip the task.
Yeah.
So you're better off removing it from your calendar. I love that. That's kind of probably my takeaway so far. That's a really huge concept.
Just take it off. So at the end of the day, when you look at, oh my gosh, what did I do today? Be honest with yourself with what you did, because I'd rather you be honest with yourself. If we can't be honest with ourselves, really, what else is there? This is about keeping our own word to ourselves. Most of us will, do anything for a client, bend over backwards, but yet we won't be honest and true with our own word to ourselves. So where's the integrity in that?
Yeah, that's really powerful. Karyn, what is the most important habit you think an agent can form?
This sort of goes along the same lines, I think, is consistency. I always say that top producing agents are not better looking than anyone else. They're not smarter than anyone else. But the one thing that they do that's different is they're consistent with what they do. So when it comes to lead generation, if you're farming, if you're working your database, if, whatever ways you go about getting business, to be very clear on what those are, number one. And then number two, be very consistent with your touches to that group or whatever that lead generation is that you're doing. Be very consistent with it. The best farmers, the best people out there are the ones that are just consistently getting out there and staying ahead of their lead generation. So consistency.
That's super, super important. What about you, David?
I might have 1.5, only because I think Alyce and Karyn and I all are on the same page, like almost saying similar versions of the same thing, but really it's 1 hour of concentrated focus every day. I got that from Ben Kinney. It's really golden, and anybody can get their hand around 1 hour. And if you have that, now you can have more than one. You're not limited to 1 hour of concentrated, purposeful focus every day. But if you have at least one every day, no matter how crazy the day is, that you can that you can say, this is what's going to move me forward. It's not going to just be taking care of stuff and reacting to stuff. This is actually going to move me forward. That's huge, I think. And I even wanted the half thing that I want to throw in, because Alyce was talking about tracking activity and results. And I think, as far as tracking activity, I think that's probably a very close second in my book to the whole, the scheduling, time blocking, concentrated effort is tracking what you're actually doing. Because I think people, what's interesting is, I don't know if Alyce and Karyn, you see this, but I find that people are very resistant to tracking their activity. And it's really interesting that it's an interesting dynamic. And I believe, at least part of it, is a fear of seeing the activity that you're actually doing. And this is also why when you talked about, about tracking daily, is we were doing something where we're focusing on tracking weekly. And what would happen is people would forget what they did. They're like, oh yeah, I made 47 contacts this week, and they're just putting the numbers out, but they really made 22, right? And so I think it's human nature to believe that we're doing more than we actually are, because we felt like we worked really hard. It felt like I made 50 contacts this week, right? But you didn't. You made 30, and the truth is 30. Now, how can you grow from that? I mean, 30 is actually good news if you look at it from the perspective of oh, I only did 30. I believe I could do 50. There's room for me to improve and get more efficient, rather than beating yourself up, right? It's like, oh, I have room for increased efficiencies. And so I think it's a huge habit to develop, to do that, even if you don't like what you see, because it is the truth.
Yeah. Do you anything to add to that, you guys?
I have one thing to add to that, and I think that you're right on. And that is really having an understanding of what those activities, the difference in the activities and your scheduling. So the difference in activities, what are activities that are related to working, what I call in your business, and activities that are going to generate more business for you. So really kind of pulling that apart for people to get them to understand and identify it when they're doing it, when they're not doing it. So that's part of it. And then also being very intentional about how you schedule yourself. So really honoring that time that you block out to lead generate, to do your lead follow-up and so forth. Honor that time as much as possible. And then when people are trying to schedule you for various things, if your mornings are your time to get that done, then be really intentional about not scheduling a home inspection or something like that in the morning. Be intentional to say, hey, can we do it in the afternoon? And really start proactively managing your schedule and take control of your schedule.
Yeah, I love that. Alyce, anything you want to add?
Nah, you guys nailed it.
We nailed it. They nailed it. They did nail it. I agree with you.
Three coaches and common thread being the schedule. Something related to the schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the takeaway. And that's exactly why I've been dying to do this panel for a while, right?
I once had a coach who she had me track every 15 minutes what I was doing. Like I had to set a timer.
Yeah.
You want a sobering activity? Try that, because it's really.
We do that at BKCO sometimes. It's
and there's nothing virtuous. There's nothing virtuous about working 24/7. I don't know where that came from. But to sell 36 houses a year, you don't need to work all day, every day.
No, it's amazing how it boils down to, a lot of times it boils down to one appointment a week. When all the business planning I've done with people, it depends, but a lot of people can hit massively huge personal income numbers with one appointment a week, which if you're technically blocking out 40 hours a week for work and you can't get one appointment, you're not talking to enough people. I mean, it's just, and you know what I always say about tracking numbers? I just say IJM. It is just math. It takes away emotion. It takes away everything. When you're newer, your conversion sucks. So what? It's just math. You just have to know the numbers. One day it'll get better. And the only way it'll get better, you just have to track them. For our team leaders, I have this really interesting stat that I track, and it's contacts to ins, to recruited ins. And sometimes it's 1% because they're brand new. And I'm like, that's still a great number to know, because every time all you have to say to yourself is every 100 people, I'm going to get someone in. It's just math. It just, as low as that might sound, at least you have a target and a number. It just strips away all emotion. Most salespeople are not going to be good at tracking numbers. In fact, I would argue if you are really good at tracking numbers, you may not be a hunter. That may not be your profile. If you're really good at tracking numbers, it's almost mutually exclusive. And so it doesn't mean you can't be a good salesperson, but most people watching this who are really good salespeople will struggle, with their numbers, which is why I just text it to yourself. And you can text it in real time. If you have a power hour, shoot yourself. You could have 2 or 3 texts in a day. The important thing is getting the raw data shipped off or put it in your iPhone notes, and you can come back to it later. What I think a lot of salespeople do is get caught up in the spreadsheet or the form or whatever. You'll never be good at that. So just find a method that you can somehow track it. And then one day when you're in the mood, you can sit down and plug it all in a spreadsheet, and it's very eye-opening to see what your conversions are and what you do. The other thing I would say on that before we move on is I get a lot of agents that I coach and I talk to, and they have this feeling that their business is a fluke, and they don't really know if they can recreate it the next year. And I used to feel that way. And all that is I trust me when I tell you there's math happening in your world. You just don't know what it is. So all this is I can ensure you there's a formula for you to hit your goals. You just don't know what it is. So if you kind of have this feeling every year going into the next year that I'm never going to recreate what I did this year, it was a fluke. I know a lot of you are thinking that. I coach a lot of agents. A lot of you are thinking like, I just don't know. I had a good year. It's not going to happen again. It's just because you don't know your numbers. Yeah. I guarantee you there's math happening, right? You don't know. All right.
We see that a lot with people that had a really good year with their sphere of influence, within their database. They're like, oh, can I recreate that? But some of this stuff I feel like just fell out of the sky because I happened to be talking to them.
100%. Someone asked on chat, do you guys have a good spreadsheet? With that said, do you have a good spreadsheet that you use for this or check off
for tracking?
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, mine was always a really basic Excel spreadsheet. And what's interesting is I always did it. I had a book here, like this, that each day was a page. And I literally just tallied every day. D for dials, C for contacts, A for appointments, V for voicemails, R for referrals. Literally, I just sat there and tallied. And then at the end of the week, I just kind of count everything up and throw it onto a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be super fancy as long as it's there.
In fact, I think that's better because it keeps you off of a screen. If you're a salesperson, a computer can be like the abyss. Like all of a sudden then you're on Facebook and YouTube and all the things. So I think the notebook and tracking it manually and then inputting it at some other time is the best way to go.
100%. Yeah. All right. Karyn, I'm dying to ask this question. I've been dying to ask this question for months. Like I'm really excited to have this today. I'm like, I got to get 3 amazing real estate coaches on. So here's my question. What's the biggest mistake you see agents make over and over again that you're just dying to tell everybody?
Not having a CRM.
Oh, okay.
CRM.
Okay.
So that's one of them. But I think it's really important if you really look at where an agent's business comes from. It's from their sphere of influence. It's people they know, et cetera. So we like to always try to get our agents to have sort of a web of connections is what we call it. A web of connections to stay in touch with people. That would be maybe an email drip campaign. It would be, a phone call. It would be making sure your social media, that you're staying consistent with your social media. So this, and maybe a printed piece that goes out once a month, once a quarter, something like that, so that you have this web of connections with the people you know, because some people will read an email, others won't. Some people will look at the printed material that you send, others won't. So we hit people in these different ways so that we stay top of mind. And if you can do that, the business from that will come. And it's one thing that could be somewhat automated with the email drip campaign and things like that. that will keep you out in front of the people that you know. And if that's where 80% of an agent's business comes from, then we need to make sure that we've got a CRM where we've got all of our contacts organized, tagged, and then we can market to them accordingly. So that's the one thing, even agents that have been in the business a long time, I have them working on that to get that shored up. So.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. In fact, it's almost rare if they have one, which I think if you hang out in a certain circle, that's probably a shocking comment. But if you deal with, agents en masse, it's the reality, right? Alyce,
Right.
What about you? What's the biggest mistake that you see?
Chasing the shiny objects and thinking there's some new way to do this business. I mean, I am fully convinced now that you could pick me up and drop me off in any city in the country and I could have a thriving real estate business in 12 months because it's all the same stuff. People are like, well, no, really, what did you do to build your business to get it to 175 units a year? Well, the same thing I did to get it to 19 in the first year, which was I talk to 5 people a day, I write 3 personal notes, and I do 1 face-to-face a day. That's it. Same thing all the time. And then you see all the shiny stuff. Well, so-and-so in my office is doing this and they're paying $29.99 a month. Should I go do that? Well, are you maximizing, the stuff we know to do, which is call people and write them notes and have lunch? No, but this thing, we don't need the thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's, success is simple, not easy. And I just going back to, your formula, right? Talk to 5 people today, 5+ people a day about real estate, and you write 3 handwritten notes. Let me play that out and tie it into Karyn's. Okay. Because I know how this goes.
Yeah.
So after your first week, that's 25 people and 15 notes. And to Karyn's point about the gold, the fortune is in the follow-up. Okay. 2 weeks in, that's 50 contacts and 30 notes. What starts happening, you start getting referrals and leads. So then what starts happening is you get a referral in week 1, and then now all of a sudden you're up to 100 conversations by month 1, 200 by month 2. If you do not have a CRM, your brain simply cannot remember, and you won't stay in follow-up mode because one person might be ready to go next week. Another person might be a year out. Another person might give you a friend who's 3 months out. It is simply too much for a mind to comprehend. You have to have tech. You have to have tech, backing you up and helping you organize those. After a certain amount of time, you should have your tasks or your to-dos or whatever your CRM system is, should be prompting you on what you should be doing, right? So your first hour could be your power hour of cold calls. Your second hour is just doing all your tasks and to-dos, right? It mounts. That sounds really simple to say it on a daily basis, but by month 4, you've now talked to hundreds of people. You've sent hundreds of notes. You've now done open houses. You've got internet leads probably coming in. It stacks up. So I love both of these.
Yeah. And just remembering success is boring.
Yeah.
The same thing over and over again. It's just going back to the fundamentals.
I mean, we love that Gary Keller quote, don't we? Fall in love with the boredom of mastery.
Yeah.
That's what it is, That's what it is. David Monroe, what's the biggest mistake?
It's tough to go third on this one because it really is. In fact, what's funny about Karyn's and Alyce's is that they relate because the CRM is the only shortcut in this business. And I remember back in 2011, 2012, I was looking for CRMs. I'm like, there's top producer, but I have to be a full-time admin to figure that out. And we have technology today. That was my dream back then. And I'm amazed to see how many people don't use the technology that's available in CRM to make that your shortcut, right? To do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And because that is the only shortcut. And I agree, because, with Alyce too, is that the shortcuts are the issue. People are like, well, I don't like to talk to people, but I'll be an expert in every other part of the business. What is it? Where do I go? Right? And yeah, there aren't shortcuts. But if I were to tail off on that a little bit, one thing is a big mistake, which is just something that people do, is that I see it a lot. People talk too much. And what I mean by talking too much is when, again, going back to when you feel uncomfortable and nervous, you have a tendency to not like silence. And so and there's also the fear of getting an objection that causes this as well, too much talking, right? So if you feel uncomfortable, you start talking to fill the air. Then you're like, Oh no, there was a second of silence. That means I need to fill the air again. And then they keep talking, they keep talking, they keep talking. And then they don't ask something. Whereas being able to switch gears and say, okay, even if you don't like silence, ask a question and let them fill the silence. And so talking too much, there's so many things that kind of go around this. This is where scripts come in. You're less likely to talk too much if you know the scripts, because you're going to be concise and specific on your communication. Mm-hmm. And you're going to handle objections better, because even objection handling, people have a tendency, they get the objection and they're like, oh, I have to kill this right away. And then they jump right into just talking too much. And I saw a couple questions on the chat that I didn't answer, but I'll actually address this now. Is I believe, and this may sound kind of strange, I believe that one of the best real estate books that you can read it's really a sales real estate book, is Objections by Jeb Blount. He wrote a book called Fanatical Prospecting. I read that. That was great.
So good.
Objections, probably one of the top 3 books as far as just around communication that I have read. And you might think, well, how can you write a whole book about how to handle objections? You can't, because there is so much psychological that goes on. And this is what causes people to talk too much, right? You have these emotions that come into play when you get blindsided, or when you're like, oh shoot, I just forgot what I was going to say. All of a sudden you have these emotions that show up, and these disruptive emotions is really what they are. They cause a physiological response, and then someone just wants to, start talking.
David, what's your favorite objection handler that you're hearing right now? We're taping. This is during COVID, by the way, for those of you who are watching the replay. What's a common objection and your favorite objection handler right now?
Specifically around COVID or people waiting to do something.
What's the most common objection you're hearing right now?
Probably one of the most common objections that I hear is concern on the buyer side is the market's too crazy right now. I hear it's hard to find a house and actually be able to buy it. I'm going to wait until things cool down a little bit. And even as far as handling an objection like that, it's about the process. Yes, there might be script involved in that. It's about the process. And the first thing that should come to anybody's mind when they get an objection like that is, don't just answer the objection. So it's like, stop, slow things down, take a deep breath, repeat the question, right? So it sounds like you're a little bit concerned that you might get in a bidding war you don't want to be in. It might be hard to find a house right now. And so you're thinking it might be better to wait a while. Is that what I'm hearing? Right. So that took me 10 seconds to do. And so with these disruptive emotions they last 10, 15, 20 seconds. And so by slowing things down, even pausing, repeating the question, and now you're at a point where it looks like, okay, those emotions are starting to calm down a little bit. So let me isolate this. So other than just the market being crazy, is there anything else that's stopping you from buying right now? Right. And so you get them to start volunteering information. Now you haven't even really touched their objection yet. Now you're 30, 45 seconds, a minute plus into this objection, handling conversation. And now you're trying to figure out from there, you want to clarify things. It's like, what are you seeing out there? What are you seeing happen out there that has you feeling that way? Who do you know that's been in these situations? What are you hearing? Where are you hearing it, right? And really get to the point. The goal on dealing with an objection is get to the point in your mind where you can understand, like if you had just the information that they volunteered to you, that you could see yourself possibly being in that same place. It's just that they might not have all the information, right? Mm-hmm. So it's figuring out, you've gone through all that, but then going back and clarifying. But it sounds like you actually would be interested in buying. It sounds like you would actually really like to buy. And if we remove this circumstance of it, the market being crazy, would you be out looking for a house right now? Right? So you're tying them to the emotion, like they want to move. Like, what's got you thinking it might be time to move anyways? Right? You have to pull them into the emotion. Now we still haven't dealt with the objection. And sometimes the best objection handler doesn't even require a script to handle the objection. It just requires asking the right questions, getting them in the right emotional state, helping them understand why they did what they did in the first place, and then all of a sudden got stopped. And they're like, you know what? I actually think it might be better for us to buy now. Right. And you get them to actually volunteer that. If you can get to that place, now that takes a lot of practice, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of practice. And this is where you do role play.
Well, sounds like they need a coach for that.
Yeah, but you'll know that, if you can handle an objection without actually using an actual objection handler, use a process like that,
Great.
then you've handled the objection, and you're probably not going to get a follow-up objection. If you keep getting follow-up objections, then you haven't actually found what the real objection is.
Great. I'm going to move to Karyn. Karyn, the person you work for, Debbie DeGroat, was one of my first coaches ever in real estate, and she taught me the best real estate script on the planet, I think.
Yes.
So I don't know what yours is going to be. I was going to ask you your favorite script, but if it's not this one, I'm going to add that one in.
Okay.
So what's your favorite real estate script?
It's actually one that Ben Kinney had talked about while we were in, the COVID during, the last few months. And that was really just to check in with people, say hello, and just really ask them, gosh, that's such a crazy time. There's a lot going on in the world. Has any of this brought up any real estate related questions I can help you with, or answer for you, something like that. So just keeping it very simple and then stopping and just listening. And that's opened up a lot of conversations for people.
It's very similar. I think the best script in real estate is from Debbie DeGroat. And it is, hey, Karyn, just wondering, what are your real estate plans this year? Do you have any? That's it. It's the best script in real estate. What are your real estate plans? Not, do you have any? Not whatever. And then that can branch off to, do you know anyone that has any real estate plans, right? Ben Kinney has added real estate. He's added the word related, which I think is great, because that can be remodeling, or it could open up a lot of doors, refinancing. It doesn't roll off. I've used the other one for so many years. It's hard for me to add a word. I've internalized what are your real estate plans, but I think it's the best script in real estate. Alyce, what's your favorite script?
Oh, this is my favorite one. It's made me a lot of money. And I've said it in the grocery store to somebody I just met, and I use it to go through the database, because I'm a big believer in a small database as opposed to a big one. And it's just, hey, can I put my realtor hat on for a second? If you were buying or selling a home, or had a friend or family member who was, do you have a realtor you'd refer?
Oh, it's the Brian Buffini. I mean, really, by the way, and it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Just fantastic.
And let me make one last point on this topic that we've been talking about for the last, 20 minutes or so. It all is sort of related to coming back to what this business is about, which is relationships. Because everything we've talked about in terms of the lead generation, just checking in with people, to handling the objections, like David, the way you handled the objections was really to do a deeper dive to try to help find out what it is they were struggling with, and really help them. And that builds the relationship and all of that. And for Alyce, what you were saying about, just be consistent with it, writing the notes and making those calls. It's about the relationships. And that kind of comes full circle with all of those things in this discussion.
So bent out of shape with Redfin and Zillow. So why not just go in and do the thing that they can't do? They can't build these relationships the way we can. So go capitalize on exactly what they can't do. Don't compete with them, because we'll lose. But go have coffee, go write the personal note, and you'll win every day.
And if you want to insulate your business from those disruptors, the best way to do that is to stay in relationship with the people that you know and develop those.
Oh, I love that, you guys. Okay, we have 3 minutes left, so that's 1 minute each. Okay, and I want to end with, in disclosure, we're taping this November of 2020 for all of you, watching this. The day after the elections, which is funny on replay, because if someone's watching this in a month, they're going to know what we don't know yet, which is who our next president is. But my question is, David Monroe, then we're gonna go quick fire. So you have a minute each. We're gonna go David, Karyn, Alyce, because that's the order you are on my little Zoom screen. What is the market of the moment? What is the lowest hanging fruit right now? David Monroe, go.
Market of the moment right now is we all want listings, but they are scarce right now. So the market of the moment here is take anything you can, because because a certain percentage of buyers out there will also be sellers.
Yeah.
And that's one easy, I should say easy. That's probably one of the best ways I've seen to get sellers. If you're not prospecting specifically for sellers like expireds or FSBOs, for example, is make sure you're willing to take buyers and that might also be selling and get seller referrals from those too.
Agreed. Karyn.
I agree. Listings is the way to go right now, and look for ways to find more listings out there and really maximize the current listings that you or your team or your brokerage has. If they're not yours, find ways to market around those listings to try to find other sellers. Really dig deep to extract as many leads as possible from that existing listing.
Love it. Alyce, you're last but not least.
I think one of the most underutilized portions of our database is our business to business segment. So who are the financial planners and the CPAs, the attorneys, the contractors that are in your database? Go deep with them. They all have the ability to refer you multiple people in a year that need to buy or sell. They know when people need to buy or sell sooner than anybody else because they see behind the scenes what's going on. So staying in relationship with them, we'll be able to have access to all the listings, all the buyers before we see somebody else's sign in their yard. So develop those relationships and go deep.
Well, I love that. I loved today's panel. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. So thank you so much, you guys, for giving us an hour of your valued time. I have to believe you had to switch coaching calls around for this. So, I mean, even for you guys, it's even harder to give me an hour. So thank you. What you've done for the agents watching, I can guarantee you thousands of agents watching have been impacted and will be impacted by what you said. So that means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to them. Join me next week, everybody. If you are watching this live, on the 10th of November, I'm doing a 2-hour business planning for our brokerages with Debbie DeGroat. She's absolutely amazing. She was one of my first coaches in real estate. And we're gonna walk you through. There's a downloadable workbook that we're gonna give you with that. It is completely free. You just need to message me, and we'll get you the link for that. The next day, on Binary Day, 11/11. I'm such a nerd. Wednesday at noon, regular Wednesday webinar time. Wendy Papazan and I are going to spend an hour going through how to plan anything in the world in one page. It's called a GPS, and it's amazing, very simple, very powerful, and how to do a 411, which is a time management calendar system that you do weekly, right? So thank you very much. I, as always, want to thank our regulars who come every Wednesday to our Wednesday webinar, and I want to welcome all of our new watchers and listeners. We are so grateful you're here. Subscribe to our YouTube page, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.